Well, hello there to all the good people of Ohio and beyond. This is Aaron Knapp, and you're tuned into Unplugged, broadcasting without permission. This is a place where the truth gets louder and we dig deeper, and where we always remember be lawful, not awful. If you want the full stories, the documents, the videos, and everything they don't want you to see, head on over to AaronKnappUnplugged.com, my new home for every investigation, every episode, and every update. And while you're here, be sure to like the video, follow the page, and hit subscribe. And share this with someone who needs the truth. We're building something real here. We're building something fearless. And we're doing it together. Welcome to Unplugged. Let's kick.
Plug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah.
Good afternoon, morning, and evening to all of you folks out there in internet land and beyond. I just want to say every once in a while, a local government leaves a trail. Not an obvious trail, not a headline, not a press release, but a trail of decisions. And when they do that, it's not a press release, it's ordinances, it's classified amendments, sudden penalties, quiet escalations that slip through unnoticed. And that's what we're going to be talking about today here on Unplugged with Aaron Knapp. Now, if nobody is paying attention, the city gets away with it. That's right. It becomes normal. It becomes a precedent. It becomes a weapon. Tonight is the story of one such moment in Lorain, Ohio, a moment where a city council attempted to rewrite weapons laws. Not for criminals, not for violent offenders, but for everyday residents who follow the law. You, the public. Exactly as the state of Ohio wrote it, is how it's supposed to stay. But in Lorain, we got chapter 549 now of the Lorain's codified ordinances. It was always a quiet chapter tucked away under the broader canopy of weapons and explosives. It's boring, it's technical, mostly it's untouched. But in 2025, the city introduced something different, an emergency amendment that expanded classifications, evaluated or elevated the penalties, and quietly changed how weapons law function inside the city. Limits. Now, the problem with that kind of whole thought process is that if you're driving from another town and you come into our city and you expect the laws to be a certain way and they're not, that's going to be problematic for you and could cause you to actually violate the law. That's why Ohio enacted this universal gun law precedent so that municipalities couldn't do this very thing. But in 549, the wording was simple, but the impact was not. Tonight's episode is going to be about that impact. It's about the authority. It's about the preemption. It's about a city that tried to cut out, tried to out legislate the state of Ohio, actually. And it's about people like you and me who now risk prosecution for conduct that the state considers lawful. Tonight, I am taking you inside every section of the ordinance, inside every conflict with Ohio law, inside every overreach. We're going to go inside the legal framework that the city broke, inside the fear and the chilling effect that it created, and inside the lawsuit that will be soon moving through the courts. I'm your host, Aaron Knapp. This is Politics Unplugged. And let's begin, folks. So, chapter 1 is the ordinance that slipped on through the shadows here. And we're going to go ahead and talk about it. But if you blinked, you might have missed it. This is how fast the amendment moved. The city of Lorain introduced a proposal and it was titled An Ordinance Amending Various Sections of Chapter 549 of the Codified Ordinance of the City of Lorain and declaring an emergency. Now they had talked about this beforehand. They had a big meeting on it where the sheriff and the prosecutor attended. And at that meeting, I spoke and I advised them that this gun law that they were trying to enact was going to be illegal. At the time, I was running for city council, and I appeared at this meeting and I went ahead and spoke out on it. Now, they later went ahead and passed this on an emergency without a 3 reading rule. So the emergency language alone is a red flag. Emergency clauses are bypassed, right, to the normal 3 readings, and they limit public comment. So they prevent residents from analyzing the law. They eliminate the cooling off period that stops government from acting impulsively. I would have come and spoke at every single one of the ones when they did the readings of this law in order to stop it, because it violates state law and the Second Amendment as well. And in this case, the emergency was not about a crisis. It was about a crime. It was about crime waves. It was not about a surge in weapon offenses. It was about control. Now, I'm going to walk you through what actually changed and, how the ordinance elevated penalties for the concealed carry violations in a way that directly contradicts Ohio Revised Code 2923.12, which under state law, concealed carry penalties follow a clear classification system. They escalate under certain circumstances. They interact with licensing, only under specific statutory triggers that are controlled entirely under state law. And so Lorain rewrote that by tying local violations to concealed carry license consequences. They referenced ORC 2923.128 just to justify it, but the statute is strictly defined. It clearly, it says exactly what triggers license suspension. It doesn't give cities permission to invent new triggers, okay? Now, for a city to amend a local version of a concealed carry to create higher penalties or additional licensing consequences is not only improper, it's quite unconstitutional. And that's the big problem here, is that this is unconstitutional. Then we get to the slingshots, the bows, the air guns, and other things that this let's see, like BB guns, objects that the state law does not classify as firearms. Objects that state law does not necessarily classify even as dangerous ordinance. Objects that children use in backyards across Ohio. Objects that hunters use in controlled environments. Lorain elevated these items from 3rd-degree misdemeanors to 1st-degree misdemeanors. Now, that doesn't seem like much, but a 1st-degree misdemeanor can carry up to 6 months in jail, and it can cost about $1,000. It can ruin your employment, and it can cost a license. It can appear on background checks permanently. And the city did this without any authority from the General Assembly. And sadly enough, they were also doing this with their recent story on tickets, right? They had all these tickets that were floating around that they were letting people write that were classifying parking tickets as misdemeanors. That cost a lot of license too. The city did this without any authority from the General Assembly. They rewrote penalties for failure to secure dangerous ordnance. Now, at the state level, the relevant statutes are 2923.17 through 2923.19. Under those statutes, the General Assembly determines what constitutes dangerous ordnance, who may possess it, how it must be handled, and what the penalties are for failing to secure it. Lorain ignored this. They increased the penalty beyond the state's classification. They created a municipal version of a crime that already exists under state law, and then they escalated it to a higher penalty than the state allows. Can't do that, guys. You just can't. It's not okay. So this is like the legal equivalent of creating new level of felony inside city limits. That is chapter 549. That's what they've done. That's what they changed, and that's why it matters. So, we're going to take a quick break here for a word from our sponsors. And in the meantime, thank you guys for tuning in. Here at Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, we like to thank our sponsors. We have a few unofficial sponsors tonight, and they are definitely not paid sponsorships. I want to throw out there a big thank you to Joseph Jones and Eric Jones of the Lorain Daily and the Vermilion Daily. They have a local news page. You should check them out. They do plenty of great work broadcasting all the news that is the news that you want to have in Lorain and Lorain County. So check them out. Also, please, if you need any legal services, feel free to reach out to Robert Gargas. You can find him listed online. He's a fine attorney and comes highly recommended by yours truly. And last but not least, I want to mention D&C Radio. Please make sure you check out one of the up-and-coming internet hip-hop stations and all of their shows. They put on a lot of shows. You have the Never Outdone show. You also have the Eric Bowen show, Speak Up, Speak Out. So please make sure you guys check them out as well if you're looking for your latest and up-to-date hip-hop artistry. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a non-paid sponsorship brought to you by Unplugged with Aaron Knapp. All right, folks. Just so you guys know, tonight's episode is definitely supported by well, it's not. I shouldn't say it's supported by it. Tonight's episode. I just really want to talk to you guys about knowing that we have a advocacy network. If you want access to public records, templates, investigative guides, and detailed breakdowns of how to fight local government overreach, you can go ahead and check out the little mini book I put out on the website, as well as all of the documents. Also, don't forget. I highly recommend you guys go out and buy one of these, a body cam. This one's here is from CamPro. They have a bunch of different versions of body cameras. They come with multiple accessories. This one's mine. I know Garen Petty has one as well. We've been talking to you guys about getting them. I highly recommend getting a CamPro body cam or a body cam of some sort. But I like CamPro. I think they're a great brand. You can clip them on, and you got this. I just strongly recommend you get one. They've got hours of recording time. And just like the police, you'll be able to mute if you want and do all that fun stuff too. So anyway, we're going to get back here to this ordinance now. To understand why the ordinance is unlawful, you need to understand preemption. Ohio Revised Code 9.68. This is the most powerful weapons law in the state. This is the one that I hammered them, telling them this law keeps you from being able to do what it is you're trying to do right now. I think, unfortunately for them. Ohio Revised Code 9.68. It was created because cities around and across Ohio were enacting a patchwork of gun laws that criminalized conduct differently from one block to another. Now, that's problematic because the General Assembly stepped in and said, hey, enough is enough. They wrote this law, 9.68. The individual right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental right. All right, we're going to say that again. The individual right to keep and bear arms is a fundamental right. Local governments may not impose restrictions on firearms, their components, or their ammunition. The state will maintain uniform laws across Ohio. All local ordinances that conflict with this are preempted. All local ordinances that conflict with this are preempted. Again, for those in the back, all local ordinances that conflict with this are preempted. All local ordinances that exceed state regulations are preempted. If cities enact them anyway, the courts will declare them void. This is not theoretical. The Ohio Supreme Court has upheld this twice. In Clyde and Cleveland, the court ruled that RC 9.68 is a valid general law that supersedes municipal home rule. Cities cannot expand, restrict, or modify firearms law beyond the boundaries set by the state. But that's exactly what Lorain's trying to do and did. They did exactly that. Now, I'm going to break it down for you guys, each conflict that they have individually. Conflict 1, concealed carry and licensing. So state law creates a comprehensive structure for concealed carry licensing under ORC 2923.125 through 2923.128. The legislature defined every cause for suspension. Cities cannot add more. Yet Lorain tried to tie the local ordinance violations to state licensing consequences. Conflict 2, dangerous ordinance. Under 2923.11, dangerous ordinance is defined explicitly. Cities cannot expand that definition. Cities cannot increase penalties beyond state limits. Lorain did both. Conflict 3, unlawful weapons transactions. 2923.20, the General Assembly defined the elements of unlawful transactions. Cities cannot broaden the list. Cities cannot increase the penalties. Lorain rewrote both. Conflict 4, non-firearm weapons. Slingshot, bows, and air guns are not covered under the firearm preemption, but local government can still cannot create penalties that exceed the structure of the state misdemeanor classifications, and they also cannot create new categories of weapons inconsistent with ORC 2923.11. Lorain wrote an entirely new category of high-level weapon offenses for devices that the state does not regulate as weapons at all. It creates unequal treatment and selective enforcement. And then conflict 5 is the emergency clause abuse. Declaring an emergency is not enough to bypass statutory conflicts. The city used emergency language specifically to avoid public review. That itself raises constitutional questions under Ohio's municipal law framework. Lorain's crossed every single line, okay? I also want to explain, when I first looked at this law, one of the big things I said is it's requiring a new. One of the laws that they modified is basically how you place your hands in the when being stopped by a police officer. So imagine the state law says you place your hands at, I think it's on the steering wheel, 10 and 2, whatever, so they can see blah, 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 right? And then you have to have all your weapons and stuff. Everything has to be separated a certain sort of way. In this case, though, now Lorain's saying you have to have your hands up on the wheel, like up where they can see them, like this, hands up, right? Don't shoot. Well, what happens if you're from Cleveland and you're an African-American man and you're driving to Lorain, right? You get pulled over by a police officer for driving while black, or whatever excuse he makes up. And you have your hands like this instead of like this. Now, he's already run you and he knows you have a concealed carry. You don't have your hands up right now. I'm not saying they would shoot you just because you were, but I'm not saying they wouldn't. That's why they made 9.68, though. That's why they made it so that literally people wouldn't have this problem. They can go from city to city to city to city to city to city and understand exactly what the law, the requirements, what everything is, right? No confusion whatsoever. And so that's the big issue here, is that Lorain crossed that line. That's the main issue that they crossed, in one of my opinions, besides they moved around a few laws here and there. And they claim they worked on this for like months. I mean, like they came into, I remember during the meeting in City Hall that like Riley was like, and I think we've got the smartest group of people working in our law department, 4 doctorates between us. And, we did this and we worked for months on this law, and they were just so proud of it. And they were just like, this is the best law ever. We did all this stuff. And I just, I'm tired of it because I just think that's what it was. They brought you guys down because they said that we were all afraid after everything that happened with the case with the officers getting shot. And what they did was they showed us a bunch of pictures of incidents that occurred with juveniles having firearms, um, and just really, really hammered it extreme, right? I just, as somebody that worked in juvenile justice, as somebody that understands that, I do understand juveniles have weapons. I do understand they're out there running around with guns, but none of the stuff that we did in this law is going to prevent any of that from happening. Everything that they've changed in this is literally just fear mongering. How are you gonna? You changed all these little things, but none of those things are gonna save lives. In fact, they're gonna put lives at risk because you tried to modify a gun law you had no right to modify. And so I pointed this out to you beforehand. I explained to you why it was dangerous and illegal. I pointed out how Columbus was in a lawsuit. 4 or 5 other cities had just lost lawsuits, all on the same thing, and you guys didn't care because you were scared. I get it. We all wanted to feel warm and fuzzy. So I even wrote. I wrote to the city and I said, "Hey, there is a way you can, make some changes that would work." A lot of it was like executive orders, right? It's just basically saying we're gonna agree to do this to help keep guns off the street, right? We're gonna make all these resolutions. Now, resolutions aren't laws. You can make resolutions all day long. And I gave them a list of resolutions they can make. But I did tell them there was some things they could change, like on the law. So one of the things I said they could change was they could change the fact that tannerite in Lorain is not regulated. Now, one of the big concerns they had after those officers got shot was the tannerite situation. Apparently, this guy had gotten a lot of tannerite, and it's already illegal for you to have that much. It's already illegal for you to transport, in mixed format. There's all these rules and regulations behind it. But what I found was the city does have a right to regulate that. So you can regulate the sale and the use of tannerite. And since it does get used in movies and things like that, and stunt shows, whatnot, you basically you require a permit, and you require an insurance policy, $1 million bond, all these different things. You require the fire chief to sign off on it. You could do that if that's what they really wanted to do to feel safe. The tannerite would be the one area that they could have attacked that was actually explosives, that actually met the title of what they wanted to change and would address what they wanted to change. And that therein lies the problem, is that they didn't want to address that. My understanding is that our law director is definitively anti-gun, and he wants to do anything he can to reduce the Second Amendment. And you can't do that, folks. That's why 9.68 exists. That's why the state created it. So when they came out and they said that this was an amazing new gun law that was going to help, curb crime and reduce juvenile crime, all I could just think of was, so. But anyway, so the city didn't want you to notice was that I mean, this is kind of where this story gets interesting. All right, when I say interesting, I mean predictable, right? Typical Lorain, because before this ordinance passed, I stood in front of city council and I warned them, and I told them these amendments violated state law. I told them that the cities have been sued for the exact type of overreach. I told them that the state preemption would void anything they passed that contradicts ORC 9.68. I told them the courts have already ruled on this. They ignored it. They didn't care, right? They just did what they wanted. And it's not the first time the city of Lorain's done this, right? Well, ignored legal warnings. The administration has developed quite the pattern of rushing ordinances, bypassing scrutiny, and creating legal exposure for the city. Most recently, we discovered it when they broke that story about how they've been letting the municipal reserve officers or whatever write traffic tickets illegally, as if they had law enforcement powers to issue traffic tickets that were misdemeanor crimes. I mean, the level of ignorance that went into that whole operation there, which I feel like should be called Operation, what was it? Mihawk called everybody the revenue stream, Operation Revenue Stream, right? That's what you should be calling it, hashtag Operation Revenue Stream, because that's what he saw the people of Lorain as, was a revenue stream. And so that's their pattern in Lorain. That's what they do. They're looking for ways to get money and any way they can legislate into, more criminality here. They're making things tighter and they don't comply with state law. And that's a problem because, they are bypassing scrutiny. They are creating a lot of legal exposure for the city. When you look at how much money we're spending when it comes to legal, fees to, Bosnia, Herzegovina, Wiccans, Pinzer, whatever, it's bad. But this one's different, guys. This one affects rights that are spelled out both like in the state and the federal constitution. I want you to just imagine something again. Imagine you're, the concealed carry license holder. You carry lawfully, you follow the rules, you comply with duty to notify, you transport your firearm as the law, exactly as the law demands. But the city you live in has created a municipal version of a concealed weapons violation that carries higher penalties or additional consequences. Maybe a suspension, maybe a mandatory notification, maybe a classification that the state never intended. How do you know which rule applies? How do you stay safe? How do you protect yourself from prosecution? These are all valid questions. And the truth is simple. You can't. You just can't, folks. Like, you got to rely on the city not to charge you. That is chilling. That is harm. That is a constitutional injury. That word chilling is very important because it goes with the language of the lawsuit that we're going to file. And the city knows it. They've been told. I made them very aware of the situation. So I don't know what to tell them. We're going to take another quick break here. And when we return, we're going to get into our next section. Here at Unplugged with Aaron Knapp, we like to thank our sponsors. We have a few unofficial sponsors tonight, and they are definitely not paid sponsorships. I want to throw out there a big thank you to Joseph Jones and Eric Jones of the Lorain Daily and the Vermilion Daily. They have a local news page. You should check them out. They do plenty of great work broadcasting all the news that is the news that you want to have in Lorain and Lorain County. All right, guys, for our next one, I just want to bring up a quick thank you to tonight's sponsor. It's Gardas Law. When the government violates your rights and you need an attorney who knows the system and is not afraid to confront it, visit Gardas Law for your civil rights, records disputes, and constitutional litigation. I've already recommended a couple of people head on over his way to discuss the possibility of litigation against the city of Lorain for their use of contempt laws and these ticketing laws where they were writing tickets and taking licensures. I imagine there's going to be quite the class action to be followed from that. As I was mentioning in the previous one was chilling, correct? I talked about chilling. Well, chapter 4, the chilling effect in real life. Now I want to talk to you about something that legal scholars discuss quite often, something that the courts recognize, something that the Buckeye Institute used to win its injunction in Columbus. This is the most recent law that passed in regards to gun laws And it was called the chilling effect. Remember I said that in the last segment, we talked about the chilling effect. Well, when the government threatens criminal prosecution, right, then, sorry about that. When the government threatens criminal prosecution for conduct the state considers lawful, people stop engaging in that conduct. So even if the city never prosecutes anyone, the fear alone is enough to suppress a constitutional right. It's not abstract, it's real, it's personal. I mean, I can't express this enough, folks. I know you guys, a lot of you out there get tired of hearing me, blah, 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 Constitution, Constitution, Constitution. I get this is an issue for a lot of people, but I do read it. I do understand it. I follow case law. I'm sitting here looking at this case law as it sits. The second I read that law that they wrote, I knew it was illegal. I've read these case laws because I'm a Second Amendment supporter. So I was already following the Buckeye Institute's lawsuit in Columbus. In fact, that's the whole reason why I've currently, obtained counsel and have given them the city notice that they're on notice for us to file this lawsuit, and we will be filing it before someone like the Buckeye Institute does. But when the government threatens prosecution for criminal it threatens criminal prosecution for conduct that the state considered lawful, then people are going to stop. And so, it's not okay, folks. So let me explain what changed for the residents in Lorain. So a father who keeps a firearm secured for home defense now wonders whether Lorain's new failure to secure penalty could be misapplied, even if he complies with state law. A wheelchair user who relies on a 30-round magazine for self-defense because reloading is physically difficult now fears that Lorain's expanded definitions could create local consequences the state never intended. A hunter who uses a compound bow legally for target practice now risks a first-degree misdemeanor if an officer interprets the ordinance aggressively. A young adult who owns a pellet rifle for small game or backyard planking now faces a criminal record that can destroy his future. A long-time concealed carry holder with no criminal history now fears infractions that the state considers minor could be in Lorain that could trigger license issues, even if those triggers do not exist under the Ohio Revised Code. It's not theoretical. It's not alarmist. This is reality, folks. This is reality, okay? This is Leningrad on the lake. That's what we're starting to call it. They do what they want here at Leningrad on the lake. Listen, we must take away your guns for our own safety and for yours. You must understand you are too childlike to have the weapons. So we, the government, must keep the weapons safe for you. When you need weapons, don't worry. We will give them to you. Otherwise, just be calm and listen to us as we slowly take away all your rights and squeeze the life out. I mean, as you slowly give in to the Mother Russia and the state. Come on, guys. Like it's obtuse. Your papers, please. We must see your papers in Lorain. I mean, let's not even get onto the fact that they also passed that law that criminalizes your kids for your behavior, for your kids' behaviors. So if your kids do something now too, you got this problem as well that's unconstitutional. But this ordinance created fear. The fear created silence, and the silence has created compliance, and compliance creates power. That's what happens when laws exceed, their authority. And when lawmakers try to regulate and put laws into place that they don't have any authority to do. That's why this case matters. Riley's out here talking about how he did such a great job in writing this and his people did in researching it. But in their research, they didn't come across the most important preemption, of them all, 9.68. You guys, not in any of your research, when you Googled it, you couldn't find. I mean, when I Google your law, even Google's like, yeah, you can't do that. Right? Like for 4 doctorates, you guys sure are a bunch of idiots, like in my opinion, because you couldn't figure this out. You couldn't figure out like that your law violated state law. That your law violated the 9.68 clause that states that no municipality can regulate gun laws beyond that of the state. So really, without it's one of those situations where they're like, tell me that you're basically telling everybody, don't screw with the law without telling me, and you're telling everybody don't screw with the law, right? State lawmakers were quite clear with this 9.68. They were like, listen, guys, here's the deal. You guys keep trying to do something that we don't like. And we're the capital, right? We're Columbus. And I can only compare this to when I came down here from OSU. Like, everybody, I told them I was going, I shouldn't say down, it was really up. I already kind of lived in this area. I'd bought a house here. And I was like, well, no, I plan on practicing in Lorain. And like everyone in Columbus was like, ew, I'm sorry for you. Like, why? Like, basically that's Cleveland State territory. Ohio State people typically stay in that Franklin County area to work. We have our connections there. We know the alumni there. I probably would have been better off there after the way I got treated by McCann and his ilk. But in the grand scheme of things, Columbus controls. And even Columbus was stupid enough to try and actually exceed this law. And the state came in and said, no, this is why we created this law, 9.68. That's what they're going to say to Riley, and Riley's going to pay my attorney. That's why this case matters. And that's, we're going to roll into our next section when we talk about that. If everything you've heard so far sounds familiar, it should. Because again, as I've been saying, Columbus passed a magazine ban. They enacted a storage mandate. They attempted to tie municipal violations to state licensing. They rewrote firearm-related penalties to create new layers of criminal exposure. And the Buckeye Institute sued them. So the judge issued a preliminary injunction. The 5th District dismissed the city's appeal. And the Ohio Supreme Court accepted only limited procedural questions. And the injunction still stands. The same legal theories apply here in Lorain, folks. The same constitutional defects exist in those laws. The same statutory conflicts exist. The same improper penalty escalations are there. The same disregard for preemption. The same chilling effect. And as per usual with Mr. Patrick Riley, the same unlawful overreach. But Lorain did something Columbus did not. Lorain used an emergency clause to avoid scrutiny. Lorain rewrote the penalties for non-firearm devices. Lorain expanded definitions beyond anything seen in the ORC. Lorain attempted to quietly criminalize behavior that the state considers minor or not criminal at all. This makes Lorain ordinance not only unlawful, but unusually aggressive. And that's what makes having a lawsuit filed essential. And I've already lined up defendants and an attorney, and we're going to file. That's without a doubt going to happen, folks. We're going to file. So I'm going to see really quick if I can. See if I can find that. Yeah, here we go. I'm gonna see if we can find it on video. If I have the whole thing. I don't think I do. Oh no, stop. Um, I'm just checking the Lorain Daily Story out here. I know we had a video of this whole meeting. There's some pictures here, and yeah, we have the audio of the meeting. So what I'm gonna do is oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I was the one that actually recorded this. But we're gonna. I'm just gonna fast forward towards the end because I'm pretty sure that's when I spoke. Hmm. Mostly what I'm seeing here is Well, that was the governor's representative speaking, and there was a whole lot of backpatting going on at this event, this meeting, and that's fine. That when I came, I got up and I wish I could figure out. They were talking about like light fixtures and different types of ways that we can increase safety, and I'm okay with all of these great ideas that they have. The fact that all of this has led to, though, a situation where we have people trying to regulate gun laws in a way that it doesn't really work. I mean, 9.68, like I said, has really clearly stated to us what we need to get done. I think that the people are definitively scared. I understand why. I mean, I get why. I get that people are scared, they're upset, you know, there's violence, there's crime, and we want answers. But people, the answer isn't to create, you know, stricter controls on something that's already got strict controls in place for it. That's the big thing that I feel like we're missing out on, this opportunity here to recognize that there's already strict laws in place. You can ask my kid this. She understands that when you're 15, 16, 17, or 18, you can't own a firearm. You can own a rifle at 18, I think. She understands that, you know, shooting someone is illegal, and if they die, it's murder. She understands these things because I've taught her. But in the grand scheme of things, we have to understand that these laws are already in place. These laws are in place. The state has regulated them. They've got them at a point where, you know, they'd be willing to go along with this. And I just not okay with that theory that, you know, we give up our freedoms for a little safety or security, you know, and that's the problem. um I sit here and I look at this whole meeting, and it's just they're all talking about how they're going to fix this problem, and all this problem comes from kids. And I just don't understand how we think that, you know, it all comes from kids. I think that you know, we need to stop and go after how the guns are getting on the streets. Of course, we have to figure that out. We have to figure out first and foremost how they're getting it. We have to understand exactly, you know, where the gun violence is coming from, but also, you know, how it's getting in. I understand a lot of us just want to, we just want an answer, right? That's sometimes not what we're going to get. You may not have an answer right away, but one thing we do need to do is start looking at this from a broader picture of how are the weapons getting into the community? How are they circulating amongst the kids? And where, you know, are they coming from? Theft? Is it all theft, or is some of it just guns that are, you know, cycling? I don't know. All I do know is that um, I just know that I don't want to see them try to regulate. I don't want to see them try to regulate this. I don't want to see them try to put this into effect. I feel like we're gonna have problems enforcing this, and so okay, I'm just trying to see if I can find my section of speaking in here. It's very difficult to kind of go through this whole. It's a 3-hour like video or audio file. The bottom line is when I got up and spoke, I basically told them exactly what we needed to do, exactly what we could do to regulate it properly. And they ignored me. They ignored the fact that I specifically told them that 9.68 was going to affect this. They specifically ignored the fact that I said that you couldn't legislate this. They ignored the fact that I told them that even they're charging adults for their kids, behaviors. There's also laws in place for that you're allowed to do, that you can actually, put in play. And it applies a financial burden on the parents and all these other things. So, these are laws that are in place. They've already been established in the state. So I don't know that this is the way I definitely know this isn't the way we do it. I just know. I mean, I know people are scared. I know people want to regulate weapons. I know they want to keep weapons out of the people's hands that shouldn't have them. But again, as I've said 1,000 times, we have that. You know what? Here it is. So here's what I said. Finally. That's the kind of stuff we need to focus on. Renounce, denounce, the men of courage, more active adults in their lives. And that's the way we accomplish that, I feel, is doing that. But I would just say read what I wrote on the weapons laws, because I do believe there's a lot of other stuff in there, but 9.68 takes the cake. And then tannerite, you can actually legislate tannerite. Like you can legislate it in the state. You can make it so it's like you have to get like a permit and all that. And if we're looking to make people feel safe, the one thing that this says is explosives. And he got so much tannerite that it was not legal, but we could make that much more illegal. We could actually put permits on it, make the fire chief be the one to monitor that, only let certain people use it. That's perfectly within our purview to do. And so that's the kind of stuff that I would see us doing. On the parent one, I wasn't really opposed to it, but I've had a lot of people ask me questions about it. My questions would be, first, the ordinance makes parents automatically guilty if their child breaks the law. But under RC 290121, criminal liability requires a voluntary act and a culpable mental state. So you guys are trying to play with that culpable mental state, and someone's going to challenge that. You can't punish one person for the acts of another.
Second, it criminalizes a vague lack of supervision. State laws on child endangerment already cover that, and they're much more narrow, and they require proof of substantial risk. And then the curfew, I worry that curfew stop is prima facie evidence against the parent. It flips due process. So just look at those guys and double check. I gave you plenty of information. I appreciate you guys all staying tonight and doing this. So I hope it works out for you.
Thank you. We do appreciate the information.
Yeah, they appreciated the information enough to straight up ignore it. Oh my goodness. Anyway, well, that's going to bring us to the end of tonight's show. And, every law tells you something about the people who wrote it. This one tells you that Lorain's government believed they knew better than the Ohio General Assembly. They believed that they could outsmart state preemption. They believed they could legislate in a field they didn't understand. That they believed that you or I or anyone would ever or never ever read the statute. That they believed no one would challenge them. They just do what they want, right? I do what I want. But someone is going to challenge them. Someone is reading that law. Someone is fighting back. Someone is refusing to accept that the city can do whatever it wants. It can't. Doesn't get to just do whatever it wants. It doesn't get to change state law. It doesn't get to change 9.68. It doesn't get to hammer out what preemption is and isn't. It doesn't get to do any of that. Tonight's episode was not about it was more than just about weapons. It was about authority. It's about accountability. It's about power. And it's about what the people who stand up when it's about, the people who stand up when government goes too far. I really appreciate you guys tuning in tonight and listening. I'm Aaron Christopher Knapp. This is Politics Unplugged. You're watching Unplugged with Aaron Knapp. Thank you guys for all tuning in today, and you make it a wonderful evening. Remember, folks, all you law enforcement out there, be lawful, not awful. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys next time.
Down to all of our departments and assure that as part of our regular checklist that we have for many projects, that we can visit this. This is not a common area because we typically don't waive fees. So it's one of those areas that we'll revisit here as we move along.
Thank you, Mr. Carrion.
Say something?
Then why are we?
Say something?
Then why are we? You want to get an
Mr.
attitude? You work for me, Carry On. Yeah, get it. Do it.
Mr. Knapp, let's have it.
No, your employee is addressing me, sir.
Safe.
No.
Excuse me, President Arredondo.
You better calm down, bro.
President Arredondo.
Madam Sprigowski.
At this point, I would move to a point of order and ask that you recess the meeting until.
A bullshit? A bullshit? A bullshit.
Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug with Nap. Yeah, we cut through the noise. No script, no leash, no polished decoys. Broadcasting without permission. We don't ask. We lift the curtain and we drop the mask. Unplug.
Ohio. I just want to remind people that your voice does matter, and people like that charge should not be in office, in my most humble opinion. You see, he just gets up here and bashes a damn former. Are you going to address the council or me? I'm talking. So anyways, I'm going to finish what I'm saying because I don't ever come here anymore, and I have a right to. He is, in my most humble opinion, a piece of shit. The city's already no. They need to know. He causes trouble. He's a fucking headache. By the way, I'm Eva. Bitch. Oh.